So we're talking about Kennedy's involvement with Vietnam.
Happiness of the Greeks, I'll define it again, full use of your powers along lines of excellence. I find that, therefore, the President provides some happiness.
Mr. President, there have been persistent reports in recent days that the State Department is negotiating with the junta in the Dominican Republic, looking toward a resumption of full diplomatic relations. Are these reports true? Is there some basis on which we would be willing to recognize the present junta?
Well, there have been conversations in the Dominican Republic to see what assurances can be given regarding the restoration of democratic rule, constitutional rule in the Dominican Republic. We have a charge d'affaires there. Quite obviously, we're interested in that restoration. Those assurances of free election. So we are...
Charge d'affaires, that's French for go fuck your mother. Baby boomers are racist, child abusing piles of shit. They are racist, child abusing piles of shit. They're irredeemably racist. Nick Villela, he has to say the N-word. He has to say the N-word. And I'm not going to talk to the guy, and I wish I could, I wish I could unequivocally say no to that shit, right? Be real in all situations. But ultimately, baby boomers are racist, child-abusing piles of fucking shit. They got us stuck into Iraq. Saudi Arabia attacked us, and they said, attack Afghanistan, attack Iraq. Why? Well, the president said so, but he's an oil baron, and he just wants to make oil revenues. Who cares? Let him make his money. That's why you're going to let him kill people? Or are you just an evil piece of shit, and you're just okay with evil? Yes, baby boomers are evil pieces of shit. Foreign policy today, here's a JFK quote. Foreign policy today, irrespective of what we might wish in its impact on our daily lives, overshadows everything else. Expenditures, taxation, domestic prosperity, the extent of social sciences all hinge on the basic issue of war or peace. That's JFK, and he's right. That's the same thing Marianne Williamson is saying. Are we a nation of war or a nation of peace? Nobody's attacking us. We're not getting attacked every day in and day out. And if we're setting the standard for war, I think you can be a defensive nation. I think you can be a peaceful nation, a Peace Corps nation. He's the first modern president with that Bieber haircut. The Peace Corps was a way to fight communism. Peace Corps was a way to fight communism. So he was trying to get Diem to do a bunch of liberal social reforms because the communists are sitting there saying they're going to provide for housing and food and water and everything. So what the hell? Why would anybody want to be Southern Vietnamese? April 17th, 1961 is when the Bay of Pigs is going to happen. He just got in there a couple months. Like when Donald Trump got in there, the first thing he did was kill that little girl in Yemen, that little American girl in Yemen. Not Nora. Was it Nora? But, they get the fucking machine, they get the hammer, they get the gun, and immediately they just turn the gun on somebody. So he had said that the CIA had presented him a plan, and he just went along with their advice. And, they didn't like this communist revolution, right? So you had Fidel Castro, Che Guevara there in that tiny little island nation of Cuba. Well, the thing about nation-state theory was Cuba was not America. Cuba was Cuba, even though America had a lot of influence. And Batista was the president. And Batista represented all the plutocracy and none of the working class people. No unions, no homes for the homeless, nothing for the poor, no medicine, no education, nothing. No hospitals, no libraries, no roads. During the Bay of Pigs fiasco, 114 Cuban exiles are going to get killed, 1,200 captured. One of the last rebels against Fidel Castro, which is interesting, since Castro's in power, those who rebel against him are the rebels. He runs out into the woods. I have nothing to fight with. They're all dead. I'm going out to the woods. I'm out of here. JFK listened to a radio of one of the rebels during the Bay of Pigs saying just that. The biggest fiasco of the Bay of Pigs was that they invaded when it was a full moon, so they could see him coming a mile away. Had plenty of time to prepare. JFK had been president for less than 3 months, April 21st. He took responsibility for it, so that's another remarkable thing. So when I think about JFK in Vietnam, I don't know which way he would go with Vietnam. I think he could go either way. He'd already committed, 16,000. He started with 400 and then 16,000, so I think he was feeling like it's You don't want to lose South Vietnam, so it's playing to his ego. But you don't want to lose it to the communist. And so he's just sitting there thinking, well, okay, America might be there and we might be the empire, but we're the liberal empire. So since liberalism has defeated communism and fascism, then we need a strong liberalism influence. They try to get Diem to do some land reform. Isn't that amazing? Land reform. So they know that land is good for the poor peasants of Vietnam. But not here in America. Lincoln did land reform. If you give people their own piece of ground, they can raise their own food. They can survive. They can do for themselves. You want me to survive here on the 14th flat of this fucking apartment corporation that's charging me $1,000 a month and they don't give a shit where the fuck it comes from? Just give us the money every fucking month, okay, motherfucker, for this space? I don't have any of this. So Batista's reactionary forces, April 17th, 1961, Bay of Pigs happened. CIA had trained Cuban exiles to invade Cuba to overthrow one of the communist nations in the Western Hemisphere. Cuba is like one of the few thoroughly communist through and through. JFK had been president for less than 3 months. April 21st, he took responsibility. So he's like, you know what? I did this plan and it blundered and he took responsibility. Sorry, America, I'll do better. But it wasn't really his fault except for he listened to the CIA. The CIA had set him up to do this shit. And then JFK is going to get killed 2 years later. And the CIA is going to stonewall everybody. They're not going to say shit. Mum's the word. 400 special forces troops, trainers, and advisors were sent to South Vietnam April 29th, 1961. April 29th, 1961. So right after the Bay of Pigs fiasco, he just fucking lost. He just apologized. He's taking responsibility. Now he's already invading another fucking country. 400 special forces. Now they're just trainers and advisors. And you know what? I kind of mock that, but then it's, how do you fucking know? He's going to later on there say, there are no combat troops in Vietnam, right? And he goes, no. Just a flat no. Like there is combat troops, and he just doesn't want to. But we're saying we're just giving them advisors. We're just giving them trainers. So 400 trainers and advisors are sent to South Vietnam April 29th, 1961. Truman and Eisenhower had been helping, so I don't even know how many were there to begin with. Were there many? I don't know. I'll swing back around on that one. JFK oversaw the largest peacetime arms buildup in history. So JFK is putting troops in Vietnam, and he's going to escalate it up to 16,000. And then he's going to be responsible for Diem. The president of South Vietnam is going to get coup d'etat 3 weeks before JFK's own assassination. Diem was a Catholic. Diem was for freedom and democracy. Diem hated the communists. Diem, for 10 years, strong, fought for his country as hard as he could. In May 1961, LBJ was sent by JFK. JFK thought the best way to beat the communists was to have liberal political, social, and economic policies. You got to be more popular than the communists. The communists are saying, when we all come together, and we're all one, then we are strong. And if anything, Vietnam might be communist forever because of what we were trying to do. We could have embraced them and praised goodness. It doesn't matter if you're a communist or not. You want to use fascist violence to feed the poor? Well, there's fascists just like using fucking fascist violence to beat up children. So, yeah, I'll take a communist over a fascist any fucking day. JFK vowed to beat the Russians to the moon. 1962, World War III was averted. Khrushchev had put 134 nuclear warheads in Cuba. So he's going to declare a blockade of Cuba in October 62. So this is just, foreign policy is what the president's all about, right? So 61, we're sitting there sending troops to Vietnam. In 61, we're in Cuba. In 62, well, look, we didn't stop Cuba, and now Khrushchev is putting some nuclear warheads in Cuba. And the blockade of Cuba was America surrounding Cuba and not letting anybody in and anybody out. Basically doing the Monroe Doctrine. McNamara had a withdrawal contingency plan. JFK made speech. He made a speech a day before the assassination about U.S. commitment to South Vietnam. So the day before he got assassinated, he says, we got to stay in Vietnam, stay in Vietnam. You got all these fucking Buddhist monks sitting there setting themselves on fire. You got Diem sitting there bombing the Buddhist monks now. We're bombing Buddhist monks now? JFK, you haven't seen how this fucking policy, we're going to get out of Vietnam in 1975. Vietnam is going to last for 25 years. 4 million Vietnamese are going to get killed and 75,000 Americans. So comparably speaking, that's a drop in the bucket, right? RIP to the 75,000 Americans who died, but 4 million Vietnamese? That's a fucking genocide. When Kissinger says bomb anything that moves or flies, bomb anything that moves or flies. That's genocide. That was, I think, Cambodia and Laos, but what the fuck? What is America doing? Well, we saw a movement in Laos and Cambodia, and we just started bombing them. And then the Khmer Rouge is going to come up, and they're going to have a fucking genocide, but they said, well, which side are you on? Are you on the American genocidal part, or are you on the Khmer Rouge? So JFK goes back and forth when it comes to Vietnam. He's for it, he's against it, he's for it, he's against it. The most powerful single force in the world today is neither communism nor capitalism. This is JFK quote. Neither the H-bomb nor the guided missile. It is man's eternal desire to be free and independent. Napoleon said some shit like that too. Equality appeals to the, everyday liberal the common man, the little average man, the liberal. So it is man's eternal desire to be free and independent. There's a particular class of people that believe in liberty and freedom. The people that believe in liberty and freedom are a higher class of people. September 1961, JFK said Vietnam was the number one threat to world security in the United Nations speech. Vietnam is the number one threat to world security back in September of 61. He's saying he's not sending combat troops. Instead, they're military advisors, trainers, and advisors. February 1962, 3,500 troops are in Vietnam. You got any combat troops there? No. May 1962, McNamara said that the U.S. is winning. The U.S. is winning in Vietnam by every quantitative measure. December 1962. We're going to go ahead with the Strategic Hamlet Program. That was Diem's program. And what are the Strategic Hamlet Program? Well, you have the communists, and they'll go into a village, right? So they'll go to My Lai, and then they'll say, hey, here's what we're going to do if you join our cause. And then they join the cause because they see that it's good. It's a national thing. We're Vietnamese, and we're communists, so we are who we are, and we want to feed ourselves. We've been here the whole time. There's 10 times more casualties, an awful lot of equipment. This is JFK, but there's a great difficulty in fighting a guerrilla war, especially in terrain as difficult as South Vietnam. So we don't see an end of the tunnel. He don't see an end of the light of the tunnel. In December of 1962, a year before he gets assassinated, he's there 61, 62, 63. So I guess he's there for 3 years. Generally speaking, we don't see an end of the tunnel, but I must say I don't think that it's darker than it was a year ago, in some ways lighter. Okay, that gives me no reassurance. June 11th, 1963, Thick Quang Duc self-immolation. The Buddhist monk is going to set himself on fire by August. Another 5 Buddhist monks have followed suit. November 1963, when Diem asked for U.S. help, it was denied. No plan to get him out of the country, killed by Military Revolutionary Council. The CIA agent, Lucien Koenig, he gave $40,000 to the generals, and the generals got the job done. McNamara was opposed to the coup. This actually starts an argument within JFK's own cabinet. They're suggesting a coup. They're not outright saying a coup, but when they had sent a cable, there was a cable 462 or some shit. When they sent this cable, 243, the most famous cable ever, you had midnight raids, August 21st. So Diem started it by bombing against those Buddhist pagodas. He was bombing the Buddhist pagodas, those big, tall, looks like Japanese buildings, architecture. Nihu, it was actually his brother, not Diem, but he wasn't going to remove his brother, and his brother was being this war hawk, over-the-top war hawk. N-H-U, Nihu. And they didn't outright say, let's do a coup d'etat, but they just said if Diem doesn't remove Nihu, who's responsible for bombing the Buddhist pagodas, then we're going to look for alternative leadership. And so they're suggesting a coup. They're not saying it explicitly, but they're saying that they're losing confidence. If you don't remove your brother, then we've lost confidence. So they're going to have the cable within 3 days after those Buddhists were being bombed. Then Diem's wife, she is such a Marie Antoinette. The Buddhists are setting themselves on fire. I mean, that's a pretty strong protest right there. You can't fight against that. You got to stop what the fuck you're doing when you start seeing Buddhist monks set themselves on fire. They're killing themselves. You think killing them first is going to like fucking... You look bad, you piece of shit. And now you're bombing the fuck out of them? Now you're bombing the fuck out of them. Because they're burning themselves and making you look bad? You know how fucking shitty you fucking look, you piece of shit? Don't make us look bad or what? We'll kill all these other innocents. You're going to keep on digging yourself a worse and worse holes. So I don't care. That's Karen. White supremacist Karen. So? You just want to feel like you won because you lose. What happened to Diem? What happened to JFK? Diem's death was pretty horrific in terms of his body was just kind of thrown off to the side. I think he was shot in the forehead. So his death was probably quick, but then they beat up his corpse and they stabbed him a whole bunch of times. And actually, that's just what we're told. So hell, it could have been a terrible Gaddafi kind of execution. JFK is going to take responsibility for Diem's death with a recording that he made for posterity on November 4th, 1963. November 21st, 1963, JFK told Mike Mansfield to organize an in-depth study of every option in Vietnam, including withdrawal. So the day before he gets shot, he's saying we got to support South Vietnam, but then he's telling Mike Mansfield, we need to get out. We need to get the hell out. So I feel like Vietnam's the big question. Would he have got us out of Vietnam? He's getting us into Vietnam. But like with the Bay of Pigs, right? Does he see that he's making a mistake and he's, eventually like Lincoln, he would get there? You have James Polk is going to become president, take half of Mexico. You're going to have Abraham Lincoln become president, free the slaves. So a person can get in there, become president, and just fucking knock out the biggest evil that's around. Take a look around, look at the biggest evil, and knock it the fuck out. So if JFK would have been in there for, maybe it wasn't politically popular for the first year or two or whatever, but once the country was still on the right track and then he got re-election, then he'd have a huge mandate to do as the fuck as he pleased, whatever he thought was best. JFK also represented change. I still get sad about JFK. There was that guy, he said to Dan Quayle, I knew Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine, and you, my friend, are no Jack Kennedy. That hits hard because I bet you Dan Quayle was going around saying he's like Kennedy. Oh, they're saying I'm like Kennedy. I mean, I'm sure you're a handsome man giving fucking speeches and shit. And so the guy just said, I knew Kennedy. You're a Republican. You're sitting there using the Kennedy name. I knew Kennedy, and you're not Kennedy. I was a friend of Kennedy, and you, my friend, you're no Kennedy. And that hits hard because he wasn't Kennedy. And then Dan Quayle was like, you better take that back, mister. That's not nice, mister. You better take that back. You better take those remarks down. And then he's going to get killed the 2 days after that. So November 21st, right? He got killed the 23rd or the 22nd, so he gets killed the day after. He told Mike Mansfield to organize an in-depth study of every option, including the withdrawal of Vietnam. Then he also took responsibility, a whole bunch of stuff, right? So biggest arms race. He's the one that gets us into Vietnam, but he's also the one that apologizes for the Bay of Pigs. He represents change. He was a cold warrior, but he's also fighting for civil rights. So he sent troops down to the South to make sure that they integrated. He took on Wallace in Alabama. So he was very much for the black man. Black man is a man. He's a citizen. He's a man just like any one of you all. In fact, you Caucasians are just mutated albinos. So you're a recessive version of the black man. If the black man ain't a man, then you recessive motherfuckers ain't no man. Whatever the black man is, you're a lesser version of. So just get used to it. You can hold your own. Caucasian, don't fret just because you're a mutated albino. But since you're a mutated albino, you got lighter skin, so you're pretty. You've been using your recessiveness to your advantage for quite some time. Something about Truman lost China. I heard JFK was like, he didn't want to lose Vietnam the way Truman lost China. Truman lost China. We were in Korea for a long time. North Korea is still hostile today. We did threaten China when it came to the Korean War, but he lost China. This sounds like Nixon rhetoric. JFK is trying to appeal to Nixon rhetoric. Strategic Hamlet program to stop communists from taking poor neutral villages. They were going to take the peasants from those villages and put them into fortified settlements patrolled by armed guards. That's what the Strategic Hamlet program was. So you had the communists would go into the village and turn the village communist. So Diem had a different plan. He was going to go into the village, find all the villagers who supported America and Diem and all the stuff that Diem was working on, and then get the good villagers, the peasants that was supportive of Diem, and put them in their own fortified compound with armed guards that, circle the compound every day. And they said that was a terrible failure. I don't know. I guess when you start from ground zero, what the fuck do you do? Okay, let's just start building forts all over the place. I mean, that's sort of how America was taken over. 300 helicopters, Green Berets, ordered not to shoot, but sometimes it wasn't possible. So 300 helicopters, Green Berets. He's sending troops into Vietnam. And it's 16,000 American troops. So it wasn't just the 400 to begin with. LBJ is going to escalate Vietnam to 500,000 troops later on. So we're going to see Vietnam get a lot bigger. But JFK got killed in November 1963. And he's talking about getting out of Vietnam. He's talking about, staying in Vietnam. He doesn't seem certain of himself when it comes to Vietnam. And so the possibility that he could have changed his mind and pushed us into a progressive direction, he could have got out of Vietnam peacefully, I think it's possible. He represents change. There's not much evidence that actually suggests that he's trying to pull out of Vietnam, though. It seems very much that he's very committed to the Vietnam War for the first 3 years. He's starting at 400, then 16,000. Now, maybe he had some other plan next year or something to, eventually get out. And like Mike Mansfield, right, he had that in-depth study. Mick Namara said that by every quantitative measure, we are winning. We are winning in Vietnam.
Our schedule, I think the first unit, the first contingent would be 250 men who are not involved in what might be called frontline operations. It would be our hope to lessen the number of Americans there by 1,000 as the training intensifies and is carried on in South Vietnam. As far as other units, we would have to make a judgment based on what the military correlation of forces may be.
Even though Kennedy tried to tell the press to make him look presentable and powerful and shit, just be respectful. Ask your questions. Be oppositional if you want to. But we're America, and we're trying to fucking succeed here, motherfucker. So if you're just trying to humiliate the guy, what good does that do? But if you're a journalist and you're curious about the policies of America, ultimately, I don't think Vietnam had a choice. They had to repel their imperialist invaders, just like America had to do with Britain. Great Britain tried to oppress us, and we threw those imperialist invaders out. We got ourselves a Bill of Rights. We got ourselves 3 branches of government, the rule of law, and a constitution. Federalism. We got ourselves a lot of stuff by overthrowing the oppressors, by standing up for ourselves. And that's ultimately, he says, that's eternally, we want freedom and independence. We as individuals, we as nations, we as a country, we want freedom and independence. So ultimately, fuck the violent, racist sons of bitches, fuck the child abusing sons of bitches, fuck the haters, fuck the ugly, hate-filled, rat bastard fucks of American society. You haven't read the Constitution? Go fuck yourself. You don't know about the Bill of Rights? Go fuck yourself. I want good Americans. I want good Americans around here. Good people, good families, good neighbors, but good American citizens. And if you're not even reading the laws, how can you obey the laws if you're not reading the laws? You're just a bunch of fucking criminal, terrorist, sovereign piles of shit. Fuck you, criminal, terrorist, sovereign pile of shit. Criminal, terrorist, sovereign motherfuckers. Fuck the criminals. Fuck the criminals. Fuck the superstitious. Fuck the ignorant. Fuck the tyrannical. Fuck the hypocritical. Fuck the liars. But most especially, fuck the criminals. Fuck the criminals. Fuck the fucking motherfucking criminals, motherfuckers. God damn, fuck the criminals.